Welcome to another edition of Dream Firm Spotlight. My name is Tyler S. Clark. I am the co-founder of Dream Firms, and we're all about helping you to build the firm of your dreams, eventually find your dream firm buyer, or sell your dream firm. So to kick things off today, we're here to talk about how to delete scope creep. Scope creep is usually the reason you can't create your dream firm, okay? You're doing too much for too little money, and you usually don't know what to do, how to ultimately transform your firm into what you've always dreamed it should be. And to help you with that, I invested my entire fortune with physicists and all of these expert scientists to locate the true source of scope creep. And after years of research, I am proud to share with you these results. But before I share them with you, I have to be clear, this is going to be terrifying. If there are any small children in the room, you have to take them out of the room. This is nightmare fuel, because I finally located the true source of all of the problems related to scope creep. Behold, the true reason for scope creep, and it's not what you think, it's actually the scope creep beast. This horrifying monster lives not on your desk where you can squash it, but in your brain. And you know the scope creep beast exists within the confines of your firm if you hear things like this, or you're saying things like this, or you're going along with things like this. Here's all my stuff right before the deadline. One day goes by. Why isn't it ready? What's wrong with you? And you're getting berated by these low-paying, terrible clients. What do you mean that's not included? You're not going to give me tax projections as a part of my tax file. I'm confused. And then all of a sudden you tell yourself, well, I guess I can do it. And then the scope creep beast gets a little bit bigger, gets a little hungrier every time you agree to these things. And then you go, well, someone will say to you, well, I don't know, can't you do it for cheaper? Can't you negotiate on this price a little bit? Funny expression I love about this. Your price, your expectations, their price, their expectations. And who doesn't love when someone says their stuff is really simple? Because it's so simple, they can do it themselves, right? That's why they got to talk to you. Scope creep B says, you should still take this client. This is a good client. We should help this person. Oh, and then there's nothing quite like the person who's dying to stick with their hourly rate pricing structure, even though they're trying to find a new accountant. Or the people who, again, just want free advice, even though they're not even clients. And we say, you know what? Actually, that is kind of easy to answer. I think I will say exactly what the right answer to that is, or what I think the right answer is, even though I don't know the totality of your situation. So the scope creep beast may sound like a joke, but the truth is it's not a joke. I couldn't be more serious about this. Yes, there's a funny little AI avatar to basically say, hey, this is the thing we've got to get rid of. These are some of, but not all of, the things we'll hear or the thoughts we'll have that contribute to slowing your business down. And really, when you think about what scope creep is, it's just your profit is getting sucked out of your business through bad decision making, just to call it what it really is. Scope creep does exist between the ears, okay? And so I'm going to talk about two very tactical ways to approach dealing with scope creep. But before I do that, there's an underlying principle that both of these tactical approaches are meant to help you with, okay? And I want to cover this. I've covered it before on the channel. I want to cover it again because I think it's so important. But I only keep really one thing on my desk. I keep one reminder of just one principle that I always remind myself of. It's known as acceptable and unacceptable, okay? This line is what stops scope creep from happening. It's the definition of this line that stops it from it stops the beast from existing, from feeding on the profits of your business, okay? If you do not define this line, everything is acceptable. In other words, it's acceptable to tolerate bad clients. It's acceptable to charge below market rates. It's acceptable to put on your superhero cape and fly in on behalf of your team that you're paying for to save you time. And then all of a sudden you still find yourself working the weekends, even though you weren't even supposed to do that. It's all the things that drive you crazy and they continue to drive you crazy because you consider them to be acceptable. And something magical happens when you say, this is no longer acceptable. It's nice to say that. It's nice to think it. And the scope creep beast will even kind of give you a nice little, oh yeah, good job. Like you're thinking it. But the scope creep the beast hates action. It hates when you actually do something that enforces why it's unacceptable. And so I'm going to go through the tactical ways that you define when something's unacceptable and how to deal with it. So let's start with the one that actually stops most people from building the firm of their dreams, okay? The problem is you have a firm you happen to have instead of the firm that you want to have. And what it means is you've slowly built over time, and you've had decisions that have been in place and have not changed since you started your firm. I mean, that's very normal. You're trying to gain traction, you're trying to build momentum, and you don't want to mess with things that are necessarily in place. But as you go further into the future, the things from the past will hold you back. It's literally like a ball and chain if you don't perpetually update overall how you deal with your clients or your workflow or your pricing structures. So let me give you a great example of like how to tactically approach this. So I will ask new clients or clients before they start to work with us one really simple question, okay? And I say, if you had to replace your effort as the owner, okay, with your current book of business at a rate that would allow someone to do the work as well as you do it, would there be any money left over in this business? In other words, if you had to replace your efforts just in the fulfillment capacity, forget anything else you do, would there be any money left over? And almost always, like 99% of the time, they're like, no, there would be no money left over. If anything, I would be losing money every single week because of how much I would need to spend to get someone to compensate for the level of effort that I put into my fulfillment engine. And I go, exactly. So what that means is your current clients are priced under market. That's what that means. Because if you need to overcompensate for a lack of profitability, you're stuck. That's like, by definition, that is the worst type of scope creep there is, because there's so much work that's being done by you, can only be done by you, or you think it can only be done by you. And even if you tried to compensate for it to pull yourself out, you can't, because now you have no money. So you're stuck. What are we supposed to do? Well, that's where the scope creep beast usually will paralyze. And I'll be like, well, what are you supposed to do? You can't do anything. And I go, no. Let's just do math. Because the scope creep beast feeds on emotion. It feeds on keeping you comfortable with the way things are and acting like it can't be better. That's what it does. And so I go, okay, well, let's just do some simple math. What are the total costs associated with delivering on this current client? In other words, we run a client profitability analysis. And my general rule of thumb is if you can't arrive at a 30% net profit margin after all costs are accounted for, one of two things is true. And usually it's both. One, you're inefficient in your service delivery model. In other words, you're doing a lot of work. You're a very high level person, but you're stuck reconciling QBO files or actually filling in information on tax returns. So naturally, your cost basis for servicing that client is really high. Because even if you take your, an okay hourly rate of $300 per hour for owner time, which is way too low. But let's just say that that's the number you use as a placeholder for, like, it takes me 3 hours to service this client's account. It's $900 an hour, and they only pay me $500 a month. I'm like, okay, well, we're already starting from way behind the 8 ball, but primarily because the service model right now is solely dependent on you. If 2.5 hours of that could be done for $100 and you only had to do 1 hour or 30 minutes, 150 plus 100, okay, we're not so much underwater now. Like, we're okay. You've got some profit there, but we have to recognize, like, of course, that's a terrible use of your time. You know that, I know that, but we look at like, oh, can I trust someone Should I trust them? Can I pay them? How much can I pay them? And I go, well, if we just look at how long it takes you, well, hopefully someone can do it in similar time, a little bit more. But again, your time is your most precious resource. It's how you invest it directly contributes to whether or not the business grows or not. So if you're stuck, it's usually because you're doing too much low-level fulfillment work, or I'd argue any fulfillment work. That's a separate point. So that's the first thing, is like the fulfillment model is usually broken because you are too represented in the delivery process, which completely skews the cost of delivery. It becomes almost unsustainable. However, if you do have a reasonable fulfillment model, in other words, not your direct time all the time, the next logical question is, well, they're just priced too low. And that's usually the fastest way to be able to adjust scope creep for the existing book of business. Remember, I said I was going to cover two. So the first one is your existing book. And if the existing book prevents you from growing, then we need to get you out of the weeds and or raise prices across the board so that you can afford to get out of the weeds. It's usually both. So how do you actually do that? So the first thing that I like to do is, like, if you recognize that someone's below net 30 profit margin, okay, you kind of have a few options you can consider. If you only need to do a nominal price increase, okay, in other words, they haven't actually truly had a lot of scope creep. They haven't like dramatically expanded the size of their business. They haven't actually asked for additional services. They have just grown okay, or they're kind of the same. And you look at it like, well, they probably need to go up 5 or 10%. The problem is most people be like, well, I can probably not worry about it. And then a year goes by, and then 2 years goes by, and then 3 years goes by, and all of a sudden there's no profit left on the client. And the client is not trained to expect annual price increases. They don't even think about, oh, wait a minute, I should know that I'm going to need to pay my amazing accountant or tax preparer or bookkeeper. I need to pay them more next year. They don't, and then it comes as a big surprise. And so this is the perfect example of, like, I don't care if it's been 1 year or 10 years, or if you got into an engagement and it's 60 days old and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh my Lord, I way underquoted this. I don't care. You can't service an unprofitable account, period. Like, that's just like the end of the conversation. Like, that's the fastest way to delete scope creep. You run a profitability analysis, you look at your costs to deliver, you go, do I have a 30% net profit margin? If no, we got to raise prices. We have to. Okay, so most people get stuck there. They'll do the analysis and they're like, now what? Right? I'm good with the spreadsheet, Tyler, but I need the next part. So the next part's pretty easy. If it's like a 10%, 15% price increase, you can usually get away with just an email/letter. Like, you don't need, and especially if you have a larger book, like, you don't need to make 100 calls to raise prices on 100 tax returns. It's just not worth it. It's just a bad trade of owner time to do that. However, when you start to get to like 25% or more, especially on monthly recurring accounts and accounts that are larger, you want to handle that with the way that you would like to be treated if you were working with a service professional and they came back to you and said, we need to have a conversation about price. So the best way to always deal with any tactical implementation of a large change in pricing or delivery is just be like, if I was on the other side of this conversation, what would be the right way to go about it? And usually that's just we call it a client appreciation call, but you basically say, hey, I've really appreciated working with you. You don't need to, you never say, oh, you got a sweet deal. Like, oh, just be like, hey, we really appreciated working with you. We've got a great vision for the future. We'd love for you to be a part of it. I'd like to talk about that. And I want to talk a little bit about the success we've had in working together so far. So you basically talk about the great things. And then you get to talk about the new things that are around the corner. And this should naturally just spur people to be like, oh yeah, this sounds great. And then you go, hey, look, and to be fair, like, we should be doing annual price increases every single year. And we haven't really done that for your account. That's our fault. It has nothing to do with you. But we got to bring you back to a place that makes sense for both of us. So this will be your new price effective immediately. And I need to charge your card for the difference for this month's service. Is that okay with you? And if they say no, just be like, okay, but look, if we're unable to agree on this moving forward, it's not a negotiation on price or services. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to work with you any longer. So this is one of my principles that I talk about a lot for taking care of the existing book of business. Part of scope creep exists because you allow for this line to be invisible, right? This line doesn't exist. And so if you go into these conversations with this is negotiable, most times people will be like, well, I kind of like our current arrangement. How about we just keep that? And what do you say? Yeah, I guess we can do that. That's fine. Because you don't want to lose a business. Because you're afraid you can't replace it with more profitable and better clients. So you're stuck. Scope creep beast loves that. They love to get you into a place where you're close, then you experience a little bit of resistance, you feel fear, and then you pull back. Can't. Do the math, know what the price needs to be, understand the tactic that you're going to deploy depending on how big the price increase is, be prepared for the conversation, be prepared to walk away from it. It's okay, because you can't service an unprofitable account. All right. So what's fascinating about this, though, is that the people who go through it, all the clients they don't like leave. All the clients they do like become significantly more profitable. Wow, what a sweet way to delete scope creep, okay? Now, as a side point on this, you can also start to realign your service model should you wish. So in other words, you might say, hey, the number of firms I talk to that spend tons of time developing packages, but they never actually implement packages for their clients is wild. Like they never actually be like, we need to make sure everyone is in one of these three things. They develop them and then they think they're going to apply them to people moving forward, but then they're negotiating on what they get. And then they end up creating 60 packages because nothing is actually streamlined. And on top of that, there's that ball and chain of all the clients getting tons of randomized services that you've built over years. And it's just chaos, right? It's just chaos. So you can delete all of the extra things that you're not being compensated for, or all the extra things that you feel you should be compensated for. That's a different form of deletion, right? You're either, we're not doing this anymore, just giving you a heads up. Here's your strong referral to take care of this. Doesn't matter what the service is, just fill in the blank. And then on the other side, it's like, hey, this wasn't actually a part of our original service plan. We just kind of were helping you out with it, but we're going to include it now moving forward. And that's part of the reason why the price has ultimately increased to where it is today. Bada bing. So now it's gone, right? Either you say, I'm not going to do it, or we are doing it and we're charging accordingly for it. It wasn't a part of your original service agreement. Here's your new one. And now the packages that you took all this time to develop, they actually are worth something to your business. They actually allow you to streamline and scale. That's the goal. Because if everybody receives something different, how can you possibly train up a team member to be able to get yourself out of delivery? It's really hard. Okay, so that's how you take care of kind of like the ball and chain. Okay. However, the scope creep beast loves to feed on new things, right? The incoming stuff, the new referrals, the new leads, the new clients. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Blob, but this is like a core memory for me from back. I think it's like movie in like the 80s. I don't even remember. It just scared me as a child, right? But like, I remember the slow moving thing. There's like a girl screaming in the corner. She's like, I'm the Blob. This weird like jelly mold thing. That's the scope creep beast. It's slowly just rolling forward and getting larger and larger and more powerful because every time you get a new client and you don't have things really well defined, it gets harder to manage to the point of no profit or stuck. And I think the Blob ended with like it took over a city and I think they nuked it. I think that's the way like every movie in the early 90s ended. But anyway, the scope creep beast, when a new client comes in, it's the same problem, okay? Which is you oftentimes don't know what's entailed. You have no idea, right? Like, and the way most firms will deal with this is they'll just have scope creep with no money, right? They're not even getting paid and they're starting to do work unpaid. What do I mean by that? So if someone comes to you and they say they need accounting work, you're like, you don't know what that means. They don't even know what that means generally. They're like, what do we talk? What do you mean? Do you need bookkeeping? Do you need some form of payroll? Like, what are we talking about? And then we'll go, okay, well, how many transactions do you have? And we'll have this like, formula or whatever that we got from somebody. And we're like, okay, here, actually, you know what? I don't think I can say that's your price because I don't really know enough. Send me your tax return. Let me look at your QBO file. And then I think I'll be able to better understand what you need. But don't pay me yet. Don't pay me anything. I don't want to be paid to do this type of work. That would be disgusting if you paid me to take a look at what you've got. I would not want you to do that. And then you give a quote, and sometimes people buy, but oftentimes you never hear from them again. And what that means is you spent your most precious resource on someone who was never actually even going to buy. That's the worst form of scope creep there is, because there was never any hope to make any money or make any profit. So how do we stop it? Okay, there's only, this is my preferred way of stopping it, is most accountants would like to be more respected. They would like their clients to respect them more. Okay, well, and that usually is like, I like advisory position. I'd like to be positioned as an advisor. And I go, beautiful, right? Question is, how do we do that from the first interaction? Well, if I just give expertise to you for free, if I just answer your questions, if I offer to look into your situation for free, does that tell you that I'm an advisor? Do you know really any advisors that are going to do that level of detail or give away that level of advice and not get paid for it? Generally speaking, not. Yeah, you can say there are exceptions to that, and I know that. I'm not saying don't help them at all, but I'm saying be clear about what's unacceptable. And I consider jumping into someone's QuickBooks file unacceptable. That's not a client, right? Like, I just don't think it makes any sense. But what I do think makes sense is saying, well, I'll tell you what, here's what we're going to do. And you don't say, pay me to give you a quote. You just take my favorite quote from my all-time greatest philosopher, Socrates. I know that I do not know, and you apply it to the extreme. I know that I don't know what your situation is. Just like if you went into a doctor's office and you were like, my heart hurts, they wouldn't be like, take this medication. And they'd be like, well, let's run some tests. And by the way, copay plus insurance before we do any of that. Okay, yes, doctor. Advisor, right? They automatically go, I know that I don't know. You admit you don't know. Oh, that's great that you do that. I would feel really weird if you told me to just take some pills the moment I said something was wrong with me, because that would say that you're not taking the time to truly understand my situation. Another expression I love, those who pay attention. Those who pay more attention. And so if someone pays you to go through what you would normally do for free, okay, guess what happens? They're actually going to care about the end result that comes from it. They're going to listen to you now. Whereas before they're like, oh yeah. Just what's the price? Yeah, I don't think I really like that. I'm going to ignore this for right now. And then they're gone. Conversely, 30 minutes. Let me understand what's going on here. Okay, what's your growth goals? How much did you pay in taxes? Any tax saving strategies that you implemented that you're aware of in the last year? Not sure. Okay, that's not that great. You got a P&L you can bring up right now that you would like bet your life on is accurate? No. Okay. Ooh, that's not so great. And you keep asking, you're in control of the conversation because you're the one asking them for stuff about their situation. And the questions are positioned in a way that positions you as like, why did the other accountant who signed me up not ask me any of this stuff? I don't understand. What's going on? This is awesome. And you go, great. Well, listen, I actually have a much more in-depth analysis that I got to run, like way more in-depth. And you look, this is going to start involving getting into softwares and really trying to figure out like what's the best way to optimize some various things in your accounting. And to be fair, look, this is where we understand if you should be a client or not. It's X dollars, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. And what we're going to do is we call it a financial 360, but what we're going to do is we're going to A, B, C, D, E. It's all the things you would normally do for free. We're going to review your tax return, see if there are any glaring omissions, problems. We're going to review your QBO. I'm going to take an hour one-on-one with you, answer all your questions in extreme detail, because now I'll actually know what's going on in detail, so I can provide a lot of value there. But whatever else you want to stack into it. But again, the best way I can summarize it is just take the things you do for free, bundle, price, one time. And now what happens is, guess what you did by extension? By actually taking time to position yourself as an advisor, get paid for it, get the client to buy in, be willing to listen to you. The beautiful thing is what happens after that. Now you can perfectly quote, exactly what you need to have at least a 30% profit margin or more. And you can explain back work. I hate that term, but you can explain all the things that they've neglected for the last several months, the price associated with taking care of it, because most firms either just like take an uppercut to profitability and like, well, I guess we'll just do it. Well, they don't want to pay it. I guess we'll just like close our eyes and pretend like it's just January 1 moving forward. We all know that's a bad idea. It doesn't make any sense. But you want to get paid for it. So now you can, and now you can quote the ongoing within exactly what you need to deliver to the client. And here's the coolest part. Okay, here's my favorite part. All of those packages that you took all that time to develop, the packages themselves are usually useless because we present all three of them simultaneously. And then what happens is people are like, well, I want this at this price, or I don't need these things, but I need these things, as if they actually know what they need for their own accounting, which is laughable, right? Like they don't know. That's why they're coming to you. If they knew, they wouldn't even need you. So now you get to say, look, I crafted the perfect proposal. I crafted the perfect opportunity for you. Like literally, it's exactly what you need. And I know that because I took the time to analyze everything about your current accounting function. So here's what's best for you. And again, you're in control of what they see now. And so if they're truly a perfect fit for the beginner package, show them the beginner package. You slot them in what's appropriate. If they're a perfect fit for the top end package, you always show them the top end package. And there is no, but this, but that, what about that? You don't want to introduce complexity into your own sales presentation. You don't want to do that. It's a very bad idea to be like this or this. And yeah, you can point to me all the studies for like how people sell iPads or some crap or wine. And I'm like, that's not what we're not selling these. We're selling professional services. Okay. It's not the same thing. Can we learn from those? Sure. Does it directly translate? No, it does not. So again, you have tremendous, tremendous opportunity when you position yourself as an advisor because you charge for the things you would normally do for free. You deliver those things, makes the person listen more. Now they're willing to spend more because they're like, wow, I spent $1,000 for this. This was amazing. This was better than all the money I spent with my past accountant. Like, this was awesome. And go, oh my goodness, what happens when I actually get a high-performing, functional back office accounting function for my business? Oh, wow. I mean, that feels like a lot compared to what I thought I was going to spend, but the experience has been so good so far. I think we should do this, right? Like this feels like the right thing. That's like when you go, what do I want the end result of my sales presentation to feel like, right? How do I delete scope creep? Well, you want them to be excited about buying the right thing at the right price from you. That's what you want, right? Like that's fundamentally what you want. And so you can craft a sequence of experiences that create that outcome. Now, it's not going to work 100% of the time, but it's a hell of a lot better than what 99% of accounting firms are doing, which is kind of like, I think your price is, well, let me look at your QuickBooks. Let me screw around with this pricing software. Package ABC, what do you think you need? Well, I guess I can agree to these different things. And I don't mean that to sound insulting. I just mean to put it in its like on its face value of like, that's what most people are experiencing when they're buying from a firm. And if you give them something uniquely different and it changes the trajectory of your firm because of the profits associated with when you do this, you've decommodified yourself. Like truly, you've actually moved away from what it feels like for everyone else. And now the scope creep beast you squashed him, right? Like, he's gone. He can't exist anymore because the person knows exactly what they get. They know exactly how much they're going to spend. You know exactly how profitable you're going to be. And that lets you fuel your future growth. And I'll give you one last like hidden benefit of this that people don't think enough about. Let's say that you get 5 leads in a week, 1 per day. It doesn't matter the time frame, 1 lead per week. And let's say you're closing 25%. So in other words, every 4 to 5 people that come through, you're getting 1 client out. And every time that 1 client is spending at least $2,000 with you for something you would have normally done for free for all 4 or 5 of those people. So that means the additional, again, let's just say 90 minutes of work, I'm probably lowballing it, but 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes. And now it's 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 1 buyer for 2,000 basically guaranteed. So you saved all that time and you made $2,000. Now the question is, what do you do with that $2,000? Well, the way I treat any of the front end sales our clients make is I say, congratulations, you now have $2,000 to go and get your next 5 opportunities or 10 opportunities or 20 opportunities, depending on how much you're spending for a book call. But like you basically offset your client acquisition costs. And anything that you sign up after that, right? Because they're doing the 360, then there's the larger back work, and then there's the monthly recurring piece. And so those are your money makers. That's where it's like, now we're making good money. But that initial $2,000, I just, I just go like, don't even think of it as anything other than I can go and get 5 to 10 more book calls now. That's like, you increase the front end cash you collect so that you can go and collect more front end cash. And then your back end cash is what you're stacking to actually scale and grow the business. And you can do it now because everyone is getting a defined service at a profitable rate that you can successfully delegate. Ba-bam! So anyway, that's how you delete this insidious beast known as the scope creep beast. My name's Tyler S. Clark. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you'd like to learn more about how you can do that in record time, there'll be links floating around down below. Thank you so much for your most precious resource. Remember, only you can create your dream firm, but we are here to help you every single step of the way. Have a fantastic rest of your workday, and we'll see you inside the Dream Firms Network.